or if you go back to your elementary.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our September board meeting. Good to see so many folks. You please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Great to see everybody. Just to let everyone know, our board, we have almost everybody here in person. And Patty, thank you for being, Patricia, thank you for being on there on remote. You can always chime in as you need to. And I just want to, thank all the staff and everyone. I've heard all these great things about, the first couple weeks and so always some challenges, but I hear it's been going well and as smooth as it can be. And, everyone pitching in and sometimes doing more than one job, just because I know there's some shortages with different things happening. But thank you all for all your hard work. Truly appreciated. We're going to look at the minutes and approve or amend them. Anybody have anything to say on the minutes? Lorna?
I just wanted to suggest on page 3, more than halfway down, under the paragraph that starts with board member Rich Smith, actually right at the top of Dyke Newell. So inserting in that last sentence that board member Ryan asked about precedence on needing non-Morse diploma approval, or however you want to word it. I asked about precedence on needing approval for the main DOE diploma in the past and its applicability to policy or something like that. If we could just insert in there, and somebody can call me or just email me if you want to know what I'm talking about.
I just want to clarify that a little
Yeah.
more. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Any other notes or details about the minutes? Okay. Can I have a motion? Jennifer?
I'll second.
And you'll second? Okay. All in favor, the minutes amended? Great. Passes. Thank you. And let's see. Any adjustments to the agenda?
Just those policies that were on the table tonight, just for our first reading.
Okay. Where do you want to do that? At the end?
Yeah, at the end is fine.
End of new business?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be 10.7. Policy first reading. Okay. Moving right along, it's a 6.0 public session. If anyone's here to speak specifically, yeah, come on up and you just let us know your name and where you live.
All right. Hi, I'm Jim Nealon, 16 Otis Shores in Woolwich. And I was here in May talking about the ESSER funds. ESSER Elementary, Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds. My understanding is that the Finance Committee begins meeting December 1. Is that a first date? Is that correct?
Yeah, we can let you know. It most likely, yeah.
Okay. In the superintendent's office is my understanding. The concern that I've got, and I've heard a lot of people with similar concern, but I'm speaking for myself, is the cliff that we may be facing at the end of this coming fiscal year, because we've received from the ESSER funds $6 million or thereabouts. And some of that's gone to roof and some of that's gone to other things, capital items, and that's fantastic. Some of it has gone to things that are hard to fund ongoing without some more funding from other sources. And we're going to have to make some hard decisions on those. And I'd like to be listening to what's happening in the Finance Committee starting then, and continue that listening with some inputs that I maybe can give and some others can give. And I will be really listening to what some ideas are from the Finance Committee at that point. So those are my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Okay. Student Board Representative report from our senior.
Yes, I am now a senior. It's kind of crazy. And on that note, I believe that SCLC is going to have their first meeting in 2 weeks, and I believe that the junior representative will be discussed at that time. Similarly to SCLC, we just had all of our elections for class officers and SCLC, and NHS has its officers now. Spirit Week is this week. Today we started with school colors, or colors by class. And then the other big thing is sports. Our boys soccer team has won its first couple of games in like 4 years, which is pretty awesome. And our girls soccer team is also doing very well for their first year under a new coach. Cross country's had a strong showing, and golf has as well. And then cheering and football are also doing well.
All right. Thanks. Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. All right. Now we'll move on to our superintendent's report. Patrick.
Just a couple of quick items. The district was approved to receive the services for a school-based health center, which will provide mental health services, dental services, and medical services. And it will be based here out of Morse. And it's a 2-year grant, but we also can apply at that time to continue the funding, hopefully at that point. Again, the center will be based out of Morse here, but any family, and Katie, you can chime in as well, but any family, students can access the services. And we're going to be trying to provide transportation as well for families and students to be able to come here. So it's very exciting. We've been talking about this for quite a while to be able to offer these services to our families. And thank you to Katie and to her group, but also to Lincoln Health, who is our partner in this project. So very excited about that. And we're likely to start the opening in January still. Okay. Custodial crew, for those of you that don't know, they were contracted out for 10 plus years, I think, in this system. And now they're employees of RSU1, and our schools have looked the best they have. No disrespect to the crew that we were working with before, but the schools look great. There's a lot of pride. And I'd also like to thank Buzz Johnson, Eric, for his lead in supervising the custodial crew across the district, and also our 3 maintenance guys, Josh, Robbie, and Kyle. It's been a tough summer with the Dyke Newell situation and just all of the projects that they have to do around these schools to make sure that they look as good as they do. And then last thing I'll just mention is just offered several professional development trainings the first week of school, the first month really. Maine Math and Science, did a lot of math training for our staff, computational fluency, go-to science for our elementary students and for teachers. Haggerty, remember you had a little lesson on that last year. We had more training on that. And so that's gone very well. And then our open houses have either happened or they're coming up. And those that have happened so far have been very well attended. And that's it.
All right. You want to keep going? Yeah, because you got the.
So twice a year for the board. It's an FYI for you. It's just fundraisers for the district, because we try to make sure you're aware of those fundraisers to make sure they're appropriate. But also number 2 is just to, be aware that we're not going door to door to our communities too much or too often, and being aware of that. So you can see, I'm sure we may be missing a few that will come in over the next month, but again, we'll give you another list in January, from January through June. So you have those. And then 8.3, Deb is under the weather so we don't have an 8.3 tonight. But if you have any questions about the financial report, but it's really what you're looking at in your packet is August, so it's just the beginning of a fiscal year. But if you have any questions tonight, I can take them back to Deb if I can't answer them.
Yeah, Jen, did you have a question?
Thank you. I'm red here. Am I on? Yeah, you're. I was just wondering, Patrick, if we could get an update on the cost of the flow program. I was just reading in the packet that there's some shortage in coverage for that. And I thought Chewonki was providing all the staffing that was needed for the program. But that may have been the first couple of years. I know the program has changed a little bit, but I would be interested if we could kind of get a description of what Chewonki provides, what we have to provide, and what's our cost. If that'd be possible. Thanks.
Great. Any other questions for Patrick on finance? Patricia, you good? Okay. All right. So let's go. Let's see. We don't have anything in their old business. All right, we'll get right into it. New business 10.1. This is the library material challenge appeal. So I'm going to hand it over to Patrick. I just want to, before I do that, thank everyone for coming out for this discussion. It's always very important to be open and aware of what's going on. And he's going to explain how the process works and what's brought us to this point. And then we're going to hear from everyone. Go ahead, Pat.
So this process is guided by policy IJJ. And so we use that the best we can. And then we have IJJE, which is a form that a community member, a parent can fill out that is a challenge of instructional materials. And in this case, it is a library book at Woolwich Middle School, well, Woolwich K-8 school, but it is designed for middle school students, this book. And so a challenge of instructional materials form was filled out back at the beginning of the summer, I believe. And then the part of the policy is for me to appoint a review committee. And it's very specific about who should be, or the positions that should be on that review committee. And then the review committee reads the book, does a report, and submits that to me. And then I share that with the concerned person. And then if the parent or the person that does the challenge of instructional materials form still doesn't agree with it, part of our policy in IJJ is that the parent can appeal to the school board. And in this case, what we're planning to do tonight is to have the parent come up. Alicia is here, and speak to her point about the book, and then have a representative from the review committee come up afterwards. And the purpose of this meeting tonight is really to just listen to both people that come up and process it. If you have any clarifying questions, that would be the time to ask that. But as far as a decision by the board, that would be done at the October meeting, and a discussion, and then a decision, and then put that in writing would be the final step of the process. So I just thought it would be important just to kind of explain that for everyone. Any questions anyone has at this point? Okay, so Alicia, I'll have you come on up to the mic here and just have you say your name and where you live just to start, and then.
Good evening. My name is Alicia. I reside in Woolwich, and my son is in 3rd grade at WCS, a school that educates grades K through 8. Back in June, I challenged the book Beyond Magenta being on the shelf at our school library, only to hear back a couple of weeks ago that the review committee, quote, supports this book remaining in the Woolwich Central School Library for middle level students, end quote. I come to you this evening to appeal that decision. I am asking that Beyond Magenta and any other related book be taken off of our library shelf and simply placed in the hands and the office of our mental health professionals within the school, or someone of similar stature like the nurse, the librarian, the principal. Just to make sure everyone is on the same page, Beyond Magenta is a book that gives various perspectives of transgender teens and their lives. Much of the committee's decision appeared to be based on the opinion that the author is a reputable one who is competent, qualified, and accomplished, having written over 30 books for children and young adults. As impressive as that may sound to some, it is completely irrelevant when making a decision about where this book is located and what age group is potentially coming in contact with it. The book itself is even rated for the grade levels of 9 through 12. I was informed back in June that because the school is sensitive to the younger crowd, the book is located at the top shelf, on the top shelf of the library, which is where I originally discovered it. Looking at your general mainstream classroom, most chalk and whiteboards are above eye level. And speaking for myself, my son is 8. He's observant, he can read, and there's absolutely no guarantee he wouldn't notice the book, especially as he gets older. I was also informed back in June that the school does its best to support all students, including those that are looking to understand the topic at hand. If we are supporting all students, then where are the books that cover all topics of sexuality? Where are the books on heterosexuality, homosexuality, and bisexuality? And I want to just make it clear that I'm just making a point. I wouldn't support those books in the school library either. And why are we cherry picking which topics to support out in the open? Unfortunately, I am sure there are some students that could use support regarding domestic violence and or abuse, especially since school might be their safe zone. Are we supporting them with books that are out on our library shelf? Last I knew, no. Those topics are personal, and children who need support at school receive it from school counselors and school social workers, just as those who need support regarding sexuality and gender identity should. Before I wrap up, I'd like to give my own personal example. I work with behavioral students in a different school district, and last year, as I was walking one of my 9-year-old students back to our room, he randomly asked me if I was married. I casually informed him I was not, and knowing I had a son, he very nonchalantly responded with, "Well, how do you have a kid if you're not married?" I had 2 choices. I could go into my own personal beliefs, not only explaining to him how it is possible to have children outside of marriage, but how I feel it is acceptable to have children outside of marriage. Or I could tell him that this was more of a conversation he should be having at home with his parents, as it's not really appropriate for school. I'll give you one guess which response I went with. Why? Because it's not my place in a school setting to put such strong personal beliefs on a student. We are not talking about opinions that involve our favorite food or favorite summertime activity. We are talking about a very personal topic, and to be honest, one that is very controversial to some, and it has no place in the school community for all of our children to see. If I want my son to learn how to play soccer, I'll send him to soccer camp. If I want my son to learn about God, I'll send him to Sunday school. We send our children to school to learn about our history, our solar system, and how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. We send our children to school to learn social skills and how to grow as individuals, amongst others. We do not send our children to school to learn about sexuality and gender identity. It states in the instructional and library media materials selection form, as most of you will probably know, that, quote, "The board recognizes that the final authority as to what materials an individual student will be exposed to rests with that student's parents or guardians. However, at no time will the wishes of one child's parents to restrict his or her reading or viewing of a particular item infringe on other parents' rights to permit their children to read or view the same material." My 8-year-old is exposed to this book because it's on a library shelf, and his father and I are not okay with it. So in the statement, in the form, it states 2 different things, but it seems with the book being on the shelf that is kind of siding and supporting the parents that either are neutral about it or support books being on the library shelf, and completely disregards those that do not support it and may have a problem with it. I'm not here to judge, nor am I here to tell other parents how to raise their children. But I'd like to find a happy medium. And so I am asking that Beyond Magenta and any other related book simply be taken off of our library shelf, like I mentioned before, and put in the hands of our school-based mental health professionals. This way, it's available to those children whose parents give permission, but it's out of sight for those that do not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for her specifically at this point? No? Okay. Oh, yeah, Natalie.
I just wanted to clarify that the issue with the book is that it discusses sexuality.
Yes, I don't think that the topic at hand, whether it's like I said, heterosexuality, any sexuality or gender identity, I don't think it's an appropriate for a school setting, especially not an elementary or middle school setting. I think it's a very personal topic amongst, like I mentioned with the example of domestic and violence and abuse, that needs to be handled at home and with mental health professionals, not publicly per se.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Did you read the book?
I'll be honest, I did not. And when I filled out the form, I was very kind of adamant that I think for me, what the book says is irrelevant. It's just the topic at hand. I don't think it belongs in a school. I think it's inappropriate for children, like I said, especially at an elementary and middle school grade level, especially since that book specifically is for grades 9 through 12.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. I think we're good. All right. Go ahead.
Now we have a representative, it happens to be Mr. Libby from the review committee.
Might have to adjust this. Can you hear me okay? Is that all right? Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me in. So as Dr. Manuel said, I'm here to represent the committee that reviewed the text in question over the summer. Just to kind of clarify, for the purpose of the committee, consisted of the school librarian, myself, one of our middle school reading teachers, and a community member as well. After reading our school board policies with regards to the educational goals and mission of RSU1 and the book in question, we believe that it should remain in circulation at Woolwich Central School for the purpose of self-selected reading on behalf of our students. We looked at 4 areas as we were kind of gathering evidence for our decision. We looked at the school board policies, the credibility of the author, the reputation and significance of the author and publisher, and we specifically addressed kind of the social emotional health of our adolescents. So with regards to the school board policies, we believe this material promotes the mission of RSU1 and follows policy IJJ, instructional and library media material selection. More specifically, there is some specific bullet points here that I'd like to point out from that policy. We believe this text takes into consideration the varied interest, abilities, and maturity levels of the students that are served. We believe this text fosters respect and appreciation for cultural diversity and varied opinions. We believe this text gives comprehensive, accurate, and balanced representation to minorities and women in history, science, leadership, and the arts, and acknowledge the contributions of ethnic, religious, and cultural groups to our American heritage. All of those are not represented in this specific text, but that's the bullet point from the policy that this would support. Another one is it stimulates growth in factual knowledge, literary appreciation, aesthetic values, and ethical standards. And it also provides a background of information that will enable students to make intelligent decisions in their daily lives. I'd also like to point out, as Alicia did as well, that at no time will the wishes of one child's parents to restrict his or her reading or viewing of a particular item infringe on other parents' rights to permit their children to read or view the same material. For us, that means this book is not used as an instructional part of our curriculum or in a classroom at Woolwich Central School. It's part of our circulation. It's available for students to check out in a self-selected way. If a parent does not want that to happen for this particular book, they can contact our school librarian. That book can be flagged so that it would not be checked out to that student. So just wanted to clarify that as well. Second area we looked at is credibility of the author. Susan Kuklin is both a competent and qualified in the field. She's an accomplished author of more than 30 books for children and young adults. Her photographs have appeared in major news publications such as Time and Newsweek. With regards to the reputation and significance of the author and publisher, this book, as I mentioned, this book was written by Susan Kuklin and published by Candlewick Press. Candlewick is a renowned publishing house for children's literature. Susan Kuklin is a reputable author and her books are well reviewed and often on best of lists in the library world. Beyond Magenta specifically received as many as 17 different accolades the year it was published. Most notably, it was received the Flora Stieglitz Strauss Award for Nonfiction in 2014 and was a Stonewall Honor Book in 2015. I think kind of the most important piece that I would like to point out is kind of the social emotional health of our adolescents, specifically to our middle school students everywhere. As we all know, the last few years have taken a toll on the mental health of our middle school students. At an age when they need support from those around them to find their identity, they have been forced into isolation. Without human social interaction, they have been left to search for information in books and on the internet. It has been said that books serve two purposes. Some are mirrors, while others are windows. The mirrors are books in which readers see themselves represented meaningfully. The windows are books that can show the reader perspectives and experiences different from their own. We believe students should have access to both types of books in our library. This book and others in our library support the development physically, socially, and emotionally of our students. This book allows students to read about people and situations that may be very different from their own experiences. This book helps to foster acceptance and appreciation of others, probably our #1 goal as educators. Our committee believes that Beyond Magenta gives our students factual information that will support them, and we believe they will feel empowered to make informed decisions. In closing, it is the belief of this committee that Beyond Magenta meets the educational goals and mission of RSU1, is written and published by a credible author and publisher, has received numerous awards and accolades, and supports the emotional well-being of our middle school students. We completely support its inclusion in the circulation materials at WCS for student self-selected reading.
All right,
Questions?
thank you very much. Questions? I'm sure you have some questions. Go ahead, Anita.
I'm just wondering what the process is for deciding what is the appropriate age group for material when it's brought in for circulation, when it's purchased, and how you manage that in a K-8 school differently than you might at the middle school or the high school, because that's a unique situation.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, policies again will govern kind of that selection. For this book in particular, it is listed in both. You can find it on both lists, for middle school lists or high school lists. That would be categorized in our library. It happened to be on the bookshelf visually on display last June. So that was in support of LGBTQT. Is that right? Thank you. Sorry, should have rehearsed that. So that's why it was on display, but normally it would be just in the circulation with our other materials in our library. Does that answer your question? I mean, Ms. Lukes could probably give you a much more specific. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Abigail Lukes. I'm the librarian at Woolwich. And so I think it depends on the book. Some books, I don't read every book that I purchase, but I read reviews for all the books. And when I purchased this book in 2015, all the reviews were glowing, and I can't quote them right now, but Kirkus and Hornbook and School Library Journal all wrote about what an important book this was to have. Some of them said it's a high school age book, but half of them said it was a middle school age book. So I picked it because it was so well renowned. I mean, winning the Stonewall Honor is it's like the best award you can get for books that deal with LGBTQ+ topics. When I do have books that come into the library that I know are on the mature end, I have stickers that go on them. So this book has a YA sticker on its spine. And that is like a heads up. You have to be on the 3rd floor to check this book out. So although the book was on display for my Pride Month display in the library, it would not have been checked out by anybody in our elementary school. I reserve those books of mature content for our middle school readers who want that challenge and have that interest. Are there any other questions while I'm here?
Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
Is it possible for an 8-year-old to get their hands on the book within the library and view the book without having it be checked out?
I would say not so much. I mean, I had a class in today, browse time, and a student selected a graphic novel that is labeled YA. And we have about 10 minutes, and when I'm done with my instruction, to find stuff to read. So they would not really have the amount of time to find a book, sit and read a book in entirety, especially a book that is above them reading wise. And if I happen to notice, I mean, this kid, I noticed the book was in their hand, and I said, "Oh, you're just gonna wait. You'll read that in a couple of years." But it would, there. It's not like they have a full study hall period to curl up with a book and read in library. We're learning, and then they have a 10 to 15-minute browse period.
Natalie.
Thank you. As a former Woolwich student, I can attest to that. And there were times that I tried to look at books and check books out that I was told that I was not allowed to read until I reached the 3rd floor. They're very good about that.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Lorna.
Hello, Ms. Lukis.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Libby. So my questions also will be more revolving around our policy, and I appreciate all the material that was provided to the board, and I appreciate the parent for coming here because this is the process that's supposed to work. I'm really glad that we have this opportunity to have this process because I know that in this day and age, there's a lot of headlines to be afraid of and there's a lot of mudslinging. And what it really comes down to is reviewing our policy, making sure that our policy is being mindful, and giving parents a chance to say what they want to say. So thanks for being here. And again, my questions are about policy. There's no hidden agenda. There's no judgment. It's just strictly policy. So with regard to IJJ, I do know, I appreciated the bullet points, and I do note that in there is maturity level. And I read the book, and I assume the committee read the book in full?
Yes.
Mr. Libby, you read the book. Compelling stories of 6 teenagers, and I would assume that complete reading included Mariah's story by both of you in the committee. In the book, okay. So, and then I also appreciate that we got resources as to age recommendations, and I did, unless my math is off, 70% of the age recommendations were 14 and up, including the publisher, and 30% were middle school. So maturity is in our policy, maturity level, and the average 7th grader is about 12. Is that right? Would you say? Okay. So even after reading the book in full and being respectful and mindful of all students, I just want to make sure that the consensus among the committee was that a 12-year-old has the maturity level to process all content area of the book. That's what I'm understanding.
You want to take that one?
I think sure. Yeah.
And I'm referring to maturity level in our policy, that's part of the decision process.
I guess I would answer, that's a tough question to answer because when you're talking about maturity level, you're talking about individuals, not necessarily just all 12-year-olds. I mean, I believe the content of this book would support them, yes. So I would say yes. Other individuals that may not be ready for that, possibly yes, but that's also, you know, why we have some measures in place to try to monitor that as well.
So the decision-making process of a 12-year-old or a 7th grader checking it out is more the individual and not just that they're in 7th grade.
I think it's a factor. I mean, they would be eligible to check that out. Yeah, they would be eligible to check that out.
And if I also assume that this policy applies to any subject matter, regardless of what the subject matter is, the application of the selection process for library media. So it's any subject.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention in IJJ is the consideration of quality of writing. And I understand that this author is award-winning. And again, I just want to make note in our discussion today that quality of writing, which includes, I would assume, language, is considered in the policy as regard to the selection process.
Yes,
Like what's quality of writing? Like not just grammar and did you dot your I's and cross your T's, but what would be quality of writing?
well, yes, quality of writing would be considered. I also know though, then as far as in terms of the authenticity of some of those stories, that she also points out in the book that she is trying to maintain that with the quality of writing as well, to make sure that the stories and the messages are conveyed authentically.
Okay. And I think I saw somewhere the book is available at the high school too. Is that right? Okay.
Yes.
I think that was my questions. I think that was it, unless somebody else has something.
Anyone else have any questions? So just to clarify with the age and the so when you get anything that is for more mature, it's YA, and does that mean it's 7th and 8th grade, or is it 6th, 7th, and 8th grade?
I basically just say the third floor.
Which you have to explain that to me, because I don't know what you mean.
Sorry, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay.
And I mean, I guess that includes books that kids have been reading for a year. Like, I mean, I get it's hard. There's books that I think people wouldn't consider, like The Hunger Games, as a book that is so troublesome because it has become a cultural pop culture phenomenon. But that is a book that also faced this situation. So I would say, yeah, there's some books where I just say, wait till you're a little bit older, and then when certain books check out, there'll be times when when I say this book is PG-13. Be prepared for that. I had a 8th grader come in today and check out a book that is labeled YA, and just said, hey, it's going to be a little on the violent side. So giving them the heads up, if I do know the maturity level of a student, and I know all my kids, I will say something along the lines of, if you start reading this and you don't feel like it's a good fit for you, or you start reading this and it makes you uncomfortable, you can always bring it back.
Right.
Because that is their choice. These are not assigned books. When they are picking these books off the shelf, it's because that's what they want, and that's what libraries do for them.
And so just I'm just trying, because I think where people keep questioning is that, is the not so much is the book itself is fine, but is it high school? Is it middle school? And so you must get a lot of books like that where it kind of bridges. I'm assuming bridges that, and you say, well, let's see, I'm seeing enough. So you must have to weigh it. Okay, I'm seeing enough interest, or I'm seeing enough.
And there are certain ones that even if there is interest, I don't buy, because I read the reviews and nothing says it belongs in a middle school.
Right.
So I don't buy it. And they have to bring their Game of Thrones from home
Yeah,
and read it.
you're not gonna, right.
Which they do. So their maturity level is sometimes beyond what I am able to offer them.
Right.
But
I understand.
in order to make sure that my collection is for a pre-K-8 school. And I guess since, I wasn't prepared to speak today, but also I will say that, there are students in our school who see themselves in these books. And so it is important to have these stories for these kids, not just the ones who want to learn about others, but want themselves.
And so obviously these are, and you said it was displayed during Pride Month, but we must also have books on other sexuality, other, growing up, just whether it's heterosexuality, whatever it is. I'm assuming there's a whole section that we must have. It's
Yes,
not just right.
We have a diverse collection in our library to represent the diverse population that we serve.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Okay. Yeah, Natalie, I think had her hand up first.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, in the 7 years that you've had the book on the shelf, has any student ever come up to you and told you that it made them uncomfortable, or that reading it wasn't a good experience for them?
No.
Thank you.
Just for purposes of coming back around, I want to be clear that any comments or questions I've had, are not necessarily the topic, but it's reading our policy, making sure that we are confident that the maturity level of the third floor is able to process the book, and stopping short of reading excerpts from the book, which is not what we're going to do here today. That's my questioning, is that, again, I don't want it to be seen that anyone should be marginalized. I don't feel anyone should be marginalized, and I feel proper language and content and maturity level on this topic are very much needed, for sure. My comments are the policy and making sure that we can feel safe about talking about the policy and asking pointed questions about maturity levels. That's all this is about. And I just wanted to make sure that for the record that I go on the record as stating that. Thanks.
Okay, great. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead.
I'm thankful that we have this process. I'm thankful that we have the documentation and the process for us to be able to be informed by it. The question of maturity is something that, was asked of us kind of in reading this book and thinking about my experience when working with children of this age. After I read the book, I felt that it was less about perhaps the topic that's questionable about gender identification or sexuality. To me, the most striking thing about this book was that it was helping children that were very isolated and could potentially be those children that we lose. So I think that the maturity that kids need to feel that they're not alone in this world, I think that was the question I asked. And that's what I felt comfortable saying to myself, that it is a maturity when children worry about, do they have a place? So.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
Will we have time to have a further discussion in October?
Yes. So just so you understand, so the point is, thankfully we've heard from the community, we've heard from, our staff, and if you haven't read it or you want to read it again now after hearing all this, please do, and we'll have a discussion in October and make a decision. Yeah. So there's time, and so we can still, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is important stuff. We're not just gonna breeze by it. Okay. Everyone good? For the moment, thank you both very much. Appreciate it. Thank you all. All right. 10.2, Credit Pathways Program presentation. So that's Eric and Katie.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just gonna, I'll get us started. Oh, I think somebody's microphone's still on. Here, Nika. No worries. I'll get us started on just some background information, and then Eric is just gonna jump in to add as needed or answer questions, okay? Does everyone receive this packet, correct, Patrick? With all the information? Okay, great. So essentially, when we were sort of writing this backup information, we wanted to walk you through it first. And so I'll talk for a little bit, but please interrupt if you want to ask questions throughout with what I share. And then hopefully we can have a discussion about one of the main questions that came up, which is the potential rewriting of IKF and discussion of a differentiated diploma for this program. So I think the timeline is important for the Credit Pathways program because there, as you all know, having gone through the budgeting process, there is, it brings us very late into the spring. And so there were two positions towards the end of last year, the RTI coordinator and the dean of students, where we weren't sure if they were going to be in the ARP budget or if they were going to be in the local budget. And so we couldn't actually start this conversation until much later than was probably best, which is why I included the timeline, because we didn't know if those two positions would move to the local budget, therefore freeing up enough funds to be able to consider having the Credit Pathways program run for 2 years. And so when Eric and I wanted to kind of share that it wasn't until mid-April, really most of this was May and June when we were discussing this, which seems very late. It's because we didn't actually know if we were going to be able to have the funds to do this. So this is a pilot program that as of right now will be run for 2 years while we see if this version of Alt Ed is something we might want to continue. You can see also historically, I listed sort of in the past all the different iterations, and Eric can speak to this much more than I can because he's been here for a lot longer. But he shared with me that it used to be called the High Street option. We also, many of you remember the alternative ed room that was in Beth Tech. Most recently, we've had the Academy team, and sort of what we've discussed for those of you who are out on the Dropout Prevention Committee is we keep going through these iterations of how do we service the students who are most likely and or do drop out and don't see a place for themselves in our school or a pathway to be able to get what they need to move on to the next sort of purpose they see as their step after high school. And so we've been really trying to look outside the box. So in doing a little bit of research and some brainstorming, this credit, and also with the congruence of the ELO position starting, knowing we were having that at Morse and at Bath Tech and JMG, we thought, okay, maybe something that's much more similar to how Bath Tech runs, where it's when I was doing the research on alternative ed programs throughout the country that are working really well, they all have a much more familial model, similar to how the Bath Tech programs run, where you go for the whole morning or you go for the whole afternoon, and you're kind of more, you spend more time together with the same smaller group of teachers. And so that's sort of what this was based on. So you could see, and I won't go through every detail of the program because I know that you could read the attached documents that were the overview and the family litter and whatnot. But essentially, these students, of which there are currently 27, spend either all of their morning or all of their afternoon in this program. And they are taking their core academics there. They are creating or have created a plan for how they're going to meet all of their credit requirements, what their goals might be both during high school and then beyond high school, so we can make sure that they're hooked up with opportunities such as internship, job aspirations. Some of them will be in the morning or afternoon in CPP and then go to the other half of their day in Bath Tech. So they're in the vocational program. There are lots of different options for what this type of program can look like. I think the one sort of sticking point here, because all of that is within our current alternative education policy. The one sticking point here, if you look into the part where sort of we talk about in hindsight, because this all happened so late, it was at the May board meeting that Eric asked for an extension for the COVID diploma that you all had granted for 2 years. At that point, we weren't sure this program was definitely going to be up and running. We didn't have the staff hired yet. We didn't know if enough students were going to be interested or would fit sort of the background. And so it didn't seem like we were ready to ask. Also, the state diploma is only 11 credits. We were hoping that, and sort of where we've set the bar is that students in CPP are required to earn 15 to 18 credits. And currently you can see, I sort of did a comparison chart for you of all the different diplomas that exist. We stand at 23 credits right now at Morris and Bath Tech. And so 18 isn't actually that far off if you consider that 7.5 of those are elective credits. And so given all those things, and knowing that we had 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, who would be asked to the program. Sort of what we were thinking is our ideal is that we would spend this fall updating graduation policy, IKF, and hopefully put in place a differentiated diploma that would allow for students to graduate with a slightly different diploma with 15 to 18 credits, as they're doing in some other places around the state. I know when I spoke to the gentleman who's in charge of these diplomas at the DOE, he mentioned Bonnie Eagle, and I've gave you a link to the sample of theirs because he said they're sort of the model that they're turning people to because it's going very well there. So that's a little bit of background. I think we also knew, we don't know in the end, we can't guess the future of what will be approved and what it wouldn't in terms of a policy change. So what does that mean for this year's seniors? There are 3 students in the program who, if we aren't able to change the policy for a differentiated diploma and pass it, which is again our first hope, they would be eligible for the disruption diploma. And you can see some of the details I put here. That diploma is applicable for any student in the state of Maine through August 31st of 2023. As you can kind of look back through, the 4 years of their high school career are very disrupted. And so, I think that is sort of our plan. If our ideal of reviewing this policy and having this discussion and moving this to the policy committee doesn't work out, we would obviously want to make sure that those 3 students are well taken care of, that they're able to get the diploma that they've worked for. It would still be more than the 11 credits because they are set to earn the 15 to 18 credits, but they can still get the disruption diploma with extra credits. Obviously, that doesn't make them not eligible. And so in terms of our plan and where we want to move from here, Eric and I would love to sort of take questions, but also walk you through what the different the draft might look like. If you look on the chart that looks like this, that's the lengthwise, you can see the standard Morse credits versus what students are able to earn in Bath Tech. The reason why I put the Bath Tech wording in there is because you'll notice that there are classes that we actually changed a few years ago. We were doing all this PBL work where even when a student takes, let's say, an automotive class, which isn't a 1-for-1 for math, they do earn a vocational integrated math course credit for their work and their diligence toward standards that aren't necessarily true math standards. And so I just wanted to show the board that there has been precedence in the past when you've changed the policy for having things not be a 1-for-1 for all students. So what 23 credits might look like for one student, that actually does mean a slightly different standard for other students. Okay. Let's take questions before we go into the details of this. I've been talking for a while.
Questions? Questions yet? Not yet. Yeah, Lorna? Lorna's got questions.
Okay, so just trying to catch up. Katie, thank you.
Sure, and sorry I was talking so fast.
Oh gosh, no, thank you. It's a lot. So if I'm getting ahead, tell me. So based on this metric that you just gave us, or this comparison, if the policy were changed, the CPP differentiated diploma would be a Morse diploma. So it's a third path. You have current Morse at 23 credits, BT at 23, and the CPP at 15 to 18. So that's Morse. It's a Morse diploma.
Yes, their origin school is Morse, just like the state diploma you've awarded students in the past has also been coming from Morse.
Yeah, I know that. And we had, at the time, we knew that was kind of a.
Are you asking, will it look exactly the same?
No, I'm asking if the policy were changed. We're not talking now about the school disruption.
Right,
thing.
the actual,
If the policy's changed, we're not talking about this is a DOE diploma.
correct.
Okay, this is a Morse diploma.
It would be a Morse diploma. It would have different wording and a different notation on a transcript. It would be called, let's say obviously a lot of the details and wording need to get worked out, but
Right.
it would be called the differentiated Morse diploma, and it would be clear that it was for a different number of credits than the traditional Morse diploma.
If I could just jump in, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, please.
oftentimes they're referred to as alternative ed diplomas,
Mhm.
but it would be a Morse diploma.
Okay. But that's if the policy gets changed based on your goals.
Mhm.
And then, again, if I'm getting ahead of your presentation, Mr. Varney, I'm sorry. So that you spoke of the seniors, but what about the 22 other kids that have signed up for and committed to this program? Are you saying that that's contingent on, because they don't have the DOE diploma in their sites right now? So it's this, it has to be this.
It has to be this, or we've just onboarded them to this program. So if it seemed like, that's why we want to have this conversation with the policy committee now. That was our plan all along, because one semester worth of slightly different classes wouldn't set any of those kids back far enough if we had to change our course of action for second semester.
You say that again.
So a sophomore or a junior who's currently in their first semester with CPP, if very quickly we would know that a differentiated diploma in policy committee looked like it was not going to go very far, we would be able to, by semester two, make sure they would be on track to go back to their traditional learning if we had to have them earn the right amount of credits.
Okay.
We'd have to change their programming, which obviously wouldn't be ideal because we feel like this is meeting their needs, but it's not too late to fix that. We would have to have a lot of really hard conversations with kids who are attending school more often and looking for, and making connections in different ways, because we would have to put them back on a more traditional path to make sure they get the 23 credits.
And I'd just like to jump in again on that. In some cases, it would, we anticipated that we would know this semester, so that it actually wouldn't be a full year. And in some case, just looking with a month behind us, credit-wise, it would probably still benefit most of those students because they are coming to school, and they're a little bit more on track with this program. So even if we have a shortened school day with some of the students, but they still may come out of the semester or the year with more credits than they did last year, for instance. And that's not true across the board, but it's true in some cases. So.
And then the only other thing is, as we all know, and as the gentleman spoke to earlier, we've got a 2-year grant.
Mm-hmm.
So we're making this commitment to this program, which it sounds from you and from Katie that is well received. And now in 2 years, as the gentleman said, we're looking at, do we continue it? Because the funding is no longer going to be grant driven.
One position is grant funded, and so we would need to look for funding for that.
Right. And we're kind of in that situation with a lot of positions. That's the hard discussion. So I think that's it for now. I don't want to monopolize the questioning.
Yeah, and I don't want to overcomplicate this, and Eric's probably, he can disagree, but I think every time at the high school, because the schedule is so complicated, you provide new offerings, it means that there are holes in other teachers' schedules, which sometimes means when you have a teacher leave and an opening, you don't always have to fill it. And so while this might mean adding a new position, every year it might not. Like it could work out where Am I explaining this right? I know you wish I
Yeah,
didn't bring this up.
There's just a lot of variables. I mean, we don't have a grand plan in that regard, honestly. But if ever there was a time to try a more robust program, and again, people who are on the dropout prevention committee, we've been beating around this for a while, having a more robust alternative education program like we did once upon a time, and which some districts do. We've tried to do that within our own schedule, and know that we're missing some students. So I think we debated using these limited funds, these 2-year funds for other positions. And this was an opportunity, honestly, that we saw to see how we could, what effects we could have with the students during those 2 years. And so I guess that is a reality, but I would say there's a lot of variables in that process too. So.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us what, I think you were going to walk through some of this, or did people have some
I was
other-
just going to say this draft CPP credits piece in the middle.
Yeah.
This is language that I slightly tweaked from Bonnie Eagle's policy. And what's nice about this is if it is decided that the policy committee would like to move forward and think about this concept of a differentiated diploma, the first portions that say what would be required of a person to gain acceptance to the CPP program, and also what track they'd be to have to obtain certain amounts of credits, we're currently already doing for all the kids in the program. So it's sort of been pre-planned that this high standard that's very much different than a state diploma, we're sort of already meeting these things. So it wouldn't be a high bar to say that this is what we wanted to do.
Okay, so I apologize being the slow one in the room. I'm getting confused now. Because we keep mentioning the policy. I thought we were looking at this and possibly voting to approve that tonight, or when you keep saying the policy committee. So what,
yeah.
tell me the process. What do we have to do?
It is confusing. So the action that Eric and I are hoping the board would take would be to approve this idea of looking further into the differentiated diploma to update the policy on policy committee, because it would need to go, I would need to actually mark up the policy, including this potential language, and it would need to go through all the various readings and edits.
Okay, so you're saying that tonight you're looking for hey, we think this is a good direction. Can you vote on the direction?
Right.
If we say yes, then the policy committee takes it after you've marked it up, and we go through the usual process of reading it, tweaking it, doing what we have to. So we have time to do that over the next month or two, is what you're saying.
Yeah, there would be a lot more in this policy than we'd want to talk about right now.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying.
For instance, there will be the devil's in the details. So you want to make sure that students aren't, for instance, that they enroll in this program in order to get the diploma, that they wouldn't be trying to advance a accelerated graduation plan based on that, we wanted to make sure that it fits the intention of why we're here. So that's why it makes more sense that it would be in the policy committee.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Go ahead, Jamie.
I have some questions. So in my work, we always think about how can we solve the problem that's right in front of us, but then how do we go upstream to help avoid some of those problems. And I was just thinking about, the students that are enrolled in the CPP program. I'm guessing before the pandemic, we're probably below grade level in reading, writing, math. So when I think about equity, and what the pandemic did to all of us sitting here in this room, there were a lot of disparities for the young people that were already experiencing challenges. So I guess my question is, would the investment that we made in the RTI coordinator over time help to prevent some of the students that are getting to 10th grade and already at a very high risk of dropping out of school.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think, this is much more robust of a alternative education program that we've had in some time, but I would say that it's not the holy grail of alternative education. And for instance, when I first got into education, I worked in dropout prevention, and we worked with Rhode Island Children's Crusade, and we worked with fourth graders. So, that's just a little bit more of an example of where it would go. And I think that the RTI coordinator is a step in that direction, definitely. So,
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure, just a few follow-up questions. I have served on the Dropout Committee as a community organization. And one of the things that has always struck me is I think we need representation from all the schools there, not just Morse or BMS, but sort of talking, starting from kindergarten on up. So I wanted to make that comment. Really appreciative of all the work that you guys have been doing, because I know these young people. I guess a couple questions. How many of the students that are enrolled in this program have IEPs, and how many are enrolled in social work?
I don't know if we put that in here, but I could get that for you. There are students with IEPs, definitely. So we adjusted how they receive their services, essentially. But not all of them have IEPs. And just kind of going back to an earlier comment, I would say, yes, some students would show that they were below grade level back in fourth grade or what have you. Some not at all. And so students would end up in CPP program and need this level of service for a whole host of reasons, many of which are outlined in that policy. But a lot of those are not. It's not causation. It's associated with where they are, and it's just a matter of trying to give the students what they need at the time. A lot of times that need is more social, emotional, having those strong connections with talented educators. We're fortunate to have found two very talented educators to be getting this off the ground for us. So.
Okay. And Anita, did you have a comment? Oh, okay. I thought you did. Anyone else? Okay. Did you have anything else, Eric, before we?
Nope. I just wanted to answer questions at this point.
I'm sorry. Did you have another question? Oh, well, we have actually.
I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that Katie and Eric. I mean, you're looking for, consideration tonight for a number of credits for the current seniors. And then the second part of the motion is for the policy to go back for the underclassmen, correct?
If the policy moves forward quickly, it could be for everybody, because we essentially are aiming towards, and our seniors are fine with 15 to 18. So it's only if the policy doesn't appear to be going through, or it's taking a lot longer, where we would apply just for those 3 students for the disruption diploma for them. We're hoping not to do that, but we do have a way to make it work for everybody.
Okay. So then back to you, Jamie. You said do you have a motion? Or do you want help with language for a motion?
Yes.
Because I think, didn't you have something?
Yeah.
Pat has something written.
It's more to, if I leave that part out, it's really just to move forward the process of revising policy IKF to include a differentiated diploma section based on the presentation this evening.
Can I say so moved?
Yeah, you can if that's your motion.
Yes.
As stated, and then I need a second. Jennifer, second. Okay. Any further discussion?
One quick thing.
Yes, go ahead.
Could we, Mr. Varney, I just went right out of my head. Well, one thing I was going to ask is, going forward, can we have, can the board get updates from the dropout committee? I don't think I've ever seen any data from the dropout committee.
I think it was rare and a long time
And
ago.
if that's something,
That's
as
a good
this
point.
goes along, if we could
Yep.
get a copy of. And quite honestly, the thing I was going to ask is completely gone.
Okay,
So
that's all right.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What else, Jamie?
I'm assuming people with this diploma will still be part of the Morse High School Alumni Association.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
That's important. Yes.
And we'll
Okay.
walk at graduation and
There'll be more graduates. Yes.
Yep. Okay. So if there's no further discussion, we have a motion and seconded. All in favor? And Patricia's got her hand up. Everybody else, Anita, you good? Okay. All right, it passes. So that's going to go to, you're now going to mark things up, take it to the policy.
I will mark it up this week and have it ready for next week to move on to whenever your first meeting is. And I can come to that to make sure to answer questions.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you both. All right. Moving right along. Let's see. We are now at 10.3, the Bath Tech lease, and I'm going to hand that over to you, Patrick.
So as you know, we've been in the Bath Tech, the old Bath Tech, I guess I would call it, BRCTC, since probably the end of June, just once we made a decision to go in there for Dyke Newell. And Mark Myers, the city manager, and I felt like it was appropriate to have a formalized lease, because we're occupying that building and we do not own it anymore. So this did go through our attorneys. It went through their attorneys. We talked to our insurance carrier. They were comfortable with it. I guess the biggest things on this lease is on 4, we're not being charged rent, by the landlord, which is the city of Bath, to be operating school there, which we certainly appreciate. 4A is highlighting the major costs. That's no different than, our other costs of, our other schools that we have in the district. And then on utilities 4B, that's a little combination. That's why we wrote it this way, because, Deb Clark and Julie Millett, and Julie's the finance person for the city of Bath. There's some utilities that, they may continue to pay, but they'll send us the bill and we'll do it collaboratively. Trying to think of any other, we've talked with our insurance carrier. They're fine. It makes sense to them about number 10. Basically, it's just common language that our insurance would go kick in first. For example, if there was a slip and fall. And so it's a blanket policy that we have for all of our buildings. And I think, page 3 talks about reasonable wear and tear. Number 19, it talks about not making holes in the wall and things like that. But again, it's, we have a good relationship. This is a very unique situation where we had to put up walls, and we did have to make some alterations, but we have a collaborative kind of conversation about those before we do that with the city. So again, this is a lease for a year, and we've got some decisions to make as we go through this year as a board about what the future is of how long we'll be in that facility for. But this is just a lease for a year.
All right, thank you. Questions for Patrick? Jennifer?
Is there a way to make a consideration to this lease? It says that the landlord only has to give 24 hours notice. And I don't know what that would be if that notice happened on Saturday morning and then they were in the building Sunday, or that notice happened Sunday morning and they were all of a sudden, there were people not belonging to the RSU in the building for any purposes. And I asked that just because, as I understand, when we did the walkthrough, there are 2 classrooms that are not really contained within the VOTEC space that we're using, and they're right around the corner, but I'm just worried about other people being in the building that wouldn't always pass our level of security and cautiousness when it comes to having the public around students.
Yeah, we lock, we lock that door so they wouldn't be able to come through if they were on the Moore side anyway. So we locked the upstairs door and that one by the auditorium, so they could not get through there. If it was a weekend, for example, or even during the day. Our staff have keys to that. But I think that's something, I know it says 24 hours. I think it's something where I could just simply have the conversation with the city and ask them with their head of maintenance, or, with Mark, and find out the right people to call our person that's kind of in charge of maintenance right now, to make, to just kind of as a courtesy. That's all. Yeah. And again, if there were, that may happen. I would think if that were to happen at all, it would be when students are not in session. We're not, they would be courtesy of, of that piece.
There is a section here that talks about the landlord can use the common areas, which is the cafeteria. That there's, and I can't remember what item it is, but oh, it is, yeah. So I was just wondering, does that mean that there will be other people that could, can Bath rent the other parts of the building to other tenants, and those tenants would use common areas with the RSU?
I mean, it talks about on 2, it's talking about the right to use and
Right.
the cafeteria and 2 other rooms of the former high school. To me, that's explaining the area that we're using. In addition to the Bath Tech space, we're using 2 rooms and we're using the cafeteria.
Okay, I guess language, and I'm not a lawyer, but it's in common with others, so I just didn't know if that was.
No, to me, that refers to just, again, we're infringing a little bit on that Morse side and then the cafeteria there, but it's not for them to be able to come in. It's more to describe the space that we're using, which is accurate right now.
Okay. I was just trying to understand, what was the purpose of not recording this document?
I don't. I mean, that's an attorney thing. I don't.
Okay.
You're talking about on the last page.
Yeah, I
Last
mean,
item,
it was back and forth with the other document that we had, the memorandum of understanding about recording it or not recording it. So it was just a question of what that would do in order to hold either party. And then I guess lastly, and just in case something happens, it talks about the landlords shall have a reasonable time to cure, which has a specific legal recommendations. But I didn't see if that, are we allowed, is there provisions in here that if someone comes along and wants to buy the building, that we are allowed a guaranteed, more time to vacate than just both parties not understand, it comes the end of the year and one party says, no, this isn't working for them or something. We would need a whole other year to find another space. So it's
and I hear you. I think, we've had those conversations, and, I think, we're going to be allowed to use that building, as long as we need to for the kids. And so it's just, some things, we have to put some parameters on there, but so I think there's a lot of flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
So the plan is for the city, I think they meet next week, maybe.
Yeah,
their plan is to consider it and approve it next week.
Right. Any other questions regarding the lease? So if not, then Lorna has a motion to read that was recommended, right? The attorney's so it's worded appropriately, and if you want to read the motion.
Sure. So the motion is, I move that the superintendent be authorized to execute and deliver a lease of the Bath Regional Career and Technical Center building at 826 High Street in Bath from the city of Bath, substantially on the terms of the lease of Bath Tech quotations presented to this meeting, with such changes not inconsistent with the general tenor thereof, as in the superintendent's judgment will effectuate said lease from the city, and to execute and deliver such other documents and take such other actions as in the superintendent's judgment will effectuate the lease transaction.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Megan. All right, second by Megan. Any other discussion?
I don't really, just to be clear, I don't really understand the wording of the motion. I understand the intent of it.
Yes.
But if that's for legal purposes, okay.
It's just for legal purposes.
I'm so hurt that you don't understand that.
Yeah, you're the only one. No.
The readability of it needs to be, but I'm sure
Yeah,
if
no,
there's a legal reason,
it's what has to be. And the main thing is we're giving permission for Patrick to sign on our behalf, and that this will work. Okay, so without any further discussion, then all in favor? Patricia's raising her hand. Okay, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. Thank you all for that. And thank you, Patrick, for putting that together with the city. So things are just a little bit clearer. We are now, do you have an update on Dyke Newell School?
Yeah, just a couple things. I wish I could give you actual figures tonight, but I can't give you those. I can give you some parameters, I guess I would say. But just to give you, again, an update is, our policy does have a $1 million limit for, and I'll read this to you, for extra expenses limit of liability. And what that really means is, the expenses, it means the reasonable and necessary extra cost incurred for us to temporarily continue as normal, as practicable, the conduct of our business, or temporary using the facilities of yours or others. So in other words, it just means what did it cost us and still costing us right now to move and be ready day one at the old Bath Tech Center. So currently right now we have spent approximately $350,000, but that number will increase just because we have some invoices, like for example, the playground. We're going to expand that a little bit further, and the 2 invoices for the initial work on the playground has not been included yet. So there'll be some other things. So I'll keep you updated on that. Then we have so that includes, I guess I would say, that includes putting up the temporary walls. It includes reactivating the sprinkler system, the elevator, the phone system, the internet. It includes all of those things. Like right now, we are looking into having some work done on the kitchen to see if at some point this year we can, be ready to serve meals over there, because right now we're transporting them, which isn't very efficient for us. It's working, and the students are being fed, but that would be another one that would come underneath that piece. So then the next kind of piece I'd share with you is damaged business personal property. And that is not a set limit on it. That is something that the insurance company comes in, takes an inventory of all of the items that were ruined or damaged, and then takes depreciation into consideration and gives us a number. That number is not finalized yet because of some of the technology items that were lost. And also damaged personal property of others would be the staff belongings. And those have been sent to the insurance company as well. And they need to look through those to make sure that they are legitimate and then put depreciation. So those 2 numbers together, I will share that with you as soon as we get those. The next thing is just 1-story structure restoration. And all that means is what it would cost to bring the K-1 single story side of the school back into code, but back into a situation where kids could go there. So that's one piece. The 2-story structure demolition, I'm meeting somebody on Wednesday. That cost is covered by the insurance company to demo the building. And that would, again, demo the piece that's a total loss. So it would be, that right side of the building, the grade 2, but the gym, the library, special ed, some specials, the office. So that will probably happen probably be complete within the next 45 days, because we want to get it done before the winter hits. And then the 2-story structure reconstruction is going to be the biggest number that I'll share with you as soon as we get it. And that is their estimate of what it would cost to rebuild that side of the building. Then code upgrades. So code for that second part of the building we're going to recreate, it's a $500,000 limit for code upgrades for that side of the building. So those are kind of the pockets of money that I just wanted to share with you tonight. And once I get finalized numbers, obviously there's an option with any of these is to, not all of them, but most of them is to accept the cash value instead of, doing the work. And that's something that, I would bring to the board, and, we'd have to have that discussion. So last, I'll just say that I think it would be important, possibly at our next board meeting, is to come up with a structure. It wouldn't be hard. I mean, we have a policy on ad hoc committees, but I do think it would be important to have a committee made up of a board member or 2, community members, staff, and to talk about the different options, as we move forward with Dyke Newell and the possibility of in Bath, of possibility of having one pre-K to 5 building and I want to say why we have this opportunity, because it's a very unfortunate situation that we're in, but we need to have those discussions and find out what makes the best sense for students, but also financially in the long term, what makes the most sense. And so there's just a lot of details to that. And I think a committee, much like the one we had for the new Morse High School and Bath Tech, that worked really well. So I think we should establish that at our next month's meeting. So that's kind of an overview on that. I don't know if you have other questions that I can try to answer, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
Questions? Jennifer?
So Patrick, the 350,000 already spent, did that include cleaning out and removing all the things that were in the VOTEC school to get it ready, to the disposal costs and the staff time cost to clean that up? And
yeah, it probably doesn't include all of the staff costs, because our guys were in there helping do that, and but then they would go and do other things, come back and help. But yeah, anything that's contracted services, and then any big equipment are the major two lines that Deb hits. So we can give you more detailed information, but probably not maybe possibly like overtime, when the guys may have come in on the weekend to just clean out the building or to clean, but not like the typical day to day.
Okay. One thing to ask Deb would be, too, in terms of our costs moving forward here, that would be either the deductible or the non-insured costs that we're incurring, is how far apart are we on those two numbers? Like, we have the items that will be valuable papers and all that other items that fall in insurance policies, but there is both a deductible and an uninsured cost. And it'll be interesting to see how where that would hit our budget for this year. We've never had this big loss. I know that we put a lot of money aside to always make sure that we can meet these needs, which is wonderful to have that. But I think this kind of falls under that. Now we finally have if the insurance is not paying for everything immediately or in the long run, it'd be nice to know how it's going to hit our budget. Is that something that we could look at eventually?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate. We feel fortunate right now that the preliminary meetings we've had with the insurance company, that the insurance is going to cover the bulk of these items. But yeah, we'll certainly let you know if there's certain things, let it be labor or non-labor, that isn't being covered, or that right now that we might be in some negotiations with the insurance company because we don't agree with certain things.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Dyke, no? Yeah, one more. Go.
How, Patrick, are you getting a sense? The question is how they're doing. Was not so much about the financial disease, but just how the kids are doing, how the staff is doing.
Again, I think my take on it from being over there a couple times a week is students are doing pretty well. They're resilient. They're, having lunch, going to recess and learning in the classrooms. Teachers have done a great job setting up their classrooms. Kudos to them. I think it's, there's still some kinks that we're working out in the facility that we still need, and some, different logistics that we got to work through. But I think people have really appreciated if it's from the technology that we're able to get in there that quickly, to the supplies that we've been able to order, and the majority of those came in time. So I think, overall, I think it's gone pretty well. But again, we're still, I guess I would say, cognizant of the fact that this is hard. And, we have a social worker kind of on call, so to speak, to help any staff or families that need something more than what we have in a day that we can offer.
Let's go into 10.5, approve Midcoast Pediatrician.
And this doesn't
contract.
This doesn't seem as important this year, but it is.
It still is.
It is. And so it's just our annual contract. Patty, for you that this is new to, is we work with Dr. Hannah through Midcoast Pediatrics, and she's our consulting physician. And so she meets with our nurses frequently. And then she's also kind of on call for anything that we need from our nurses to Katie and I, and sometimes the principals will reach out to her as well. So it's just that annual agreement.
Okay. Can I have, unless there's some questions, can I have a motion?
Say I move to approve.
Okay, great. And second, Megan, and second by Lorna. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. And it passes, so that's done. Always good to have her on board with us. Schedule B.
Yeah, Schedule B is much like fundraising. It's just a FYI for you, just so you can see what we offer for Schedule B, but also what positions are still open in case you know somebody. But
Okay.
just it's just there for your information. That's all. And it's
Great.
co and extracurricular. That's it.
All right, then we got the policy, first readings. So what do we have? We've got, how many, 3? So it looks like non-discrimination, equal opportunity and affirmative action, that's AC, and another ACAB, harassment and sexual harassment of school employees, and ACAA, harassment and sexual harassment of students. Looks like some updated policies for us to review. No action tonight. Just so you know, Patty, for your information, that just will, we go through all this, and then if you have any questions, you can ask some now and then read through it, and then we take action the next meeting on these policies. So does anyone have any initial questions or concerns? Yeah, Lorna?
No question. I just wanted to confirm, these kind of come down from Maine School Board Association, is that right? And I just wanted to make a note that I'm happy to see the, I can't remember what it's called, but the one about hairstyles. I'm happy to see that we're updating that. Just my 2 cents.
Great.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Then we'll review those next time. Looks like next meeting date, October 24th. And we're well into the year now. If nothing else, move to a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, okay, all in favor? All right, thank you all for your time and efforts and being here. Thank you.
Thank you.